Tim Kirk, Gourmet Wine Magazine Winemaker of the Year. Big accolade, congratulations. Tell us all about it.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Yes, it is a very significant accolade. It's a very important award. So the Gourmet Traveller Wine Magazine, they have their regular tasting panel, some really top-notch wine judges on their panel. Of course, they assess wines for the magazine and in their own independent statuses that they have, the newspapers, etc. So these guys look at their tasting notes, thousands of tasting notes, and they work out who in the wine industry is really kicking goals, and they come up with 8 finalists. And then of the 8 finalists, which they announce and profile in the Gourmet Traveller Wine Magazine, they decide who is to be the winemaker of the year. And for me, it was my turn, as it turns out. 2013 was my year, winemaker of the year.
Fantastic. Well, a great accolade, as we've agreed. Apparently you make a Shiraz Viognier that's right up there with the best of them in Australia. Can you tell us a bit about that particular wine?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things to say about it, Mike. It's a different take, a whole new take, if you like, on Australian Shiraz. And I think many of us have grown up with that fabulous South Australian style of Shiraz, which is black, gorgeously, opulently fruited, lots of flavour, heaps of flavour, a fair bit of alcohol, good tannin. We don't make a Shiraz like that. Here in the Canberra district and at Murray and Bateman, where our vineyard is here, we're quite cool climate. We sit at 600 metres above sea level, which means we have warm days and cool nights, which means it takes a longer period of time to get the same level of ripeness, because once the temperature drops below 15 degrees at night, as it regularly does during that ripening period of March into April, the ripening process slows down. Not much activity goes on in the vines under 15 degrees, so you need a longer period of time to get the same level of ripeness. So that means that we tend to see a lot more elegant, more subtle flavours, more fragrance, not so much big, robust characters, but more ethereal, savoury, spicy characters. And where the great traditional Australian Shiraz is more full-bodied, in the Canberra district we tend to make much more medium-bodied styles of Shiraz. So they're a bit lighter. They are fantastic, of course, for pairing with food. And it's really a style of Shiraz that's gaining a lot of traction in the marketplace. And now the Shiraz Viognier then is a pretty interesting thing, because Viognier is actually a white grape. So you might ask, well, why would you put a white grape in with the red? Now I have to tell you that it is mainly red. So the Shiraz Viognier that we make at Clonakilla is like 95% Shiraz, but we do co-ferment just 5% of that rare white grape Viognier. And we stole that idea, as we've stolen many of our best winemaking ideas, from the French. And there's a place in the Rhone Valley in France where they make knockout Shiraz, and in their vineyards there in this place called Côte Rôtie, they actually have Viognier in many places planted in the vineyard alongside the Shiraz. And for centuries there they've been doing this blend, Shiraz Viognier. So after I visited Côte Rôtie back in 1991, I tasted these amazing wines, and I was so inspired by them because they had this extraordinary level of perfume and elegance and fragrance and subtlety to them, that I thought it would be fantastic if we could make a style of Shiraz like this back in Murray and Bateman. And as it turns out, my dad had planted some Viognier a few years earlier, and his original idea had been to make a white Viognier wine. But when I came back from the Rhone with my head and heart full of this Shiraz Viognier concept, I said to Dad, well, why don't we give this a go? Because the Viognier was just about to crop for the first time, as it turned out, the year that I returned. So to his great credit, Dad gave a young man his druthers, and off I set making the Shiraz Viognier blend. And of course now we've been doing it for over 20 years, and it's recognised all over the world as one of the great Australian Shiraz styles now. So there you go.
That's fantastic. You're obviously an overnight success, so tell us about your family history and the history of the winery here and at Murray and Bateman.
Yeah, it's taken us 40 years to become an overnight success, Mike. It's a story with agriculture and the marketing things in general, as you well know. That the vineyard was first established by my dad, Dr. John Kirk, back in 1971. And he had been a recent immigrant come from Ireland. He's got Irish background. He was a biochemist. He had his doctorate in biochemistry from Cambridge, and he was teaching at the University of Aberystwyth in Wales, where I was born, where he was headhunted by the CSIRO to come over to Australia and work in the division of plant industry over here. So sure enough, he managed to talk his wife, he managed to talk my mum somehow into shipping the family, 4 boys it was at that stage, by ship over to Australia in 1968, settled in Canberra. My dad had had a lifelong interest in wine, and that had started in his very early days working with his family business in a hotel in County Clare, the Hydro Hotel in Lisdonvarna, where at the age of 14 he'd been given the job of looking after the bar. So even before he developed a taste for wine himself, he had to learn all about the great wines of the world so he could make the right purchasing decisions for the family business. And he just had a passion for wine ever since that moment, really, that he started to research the great wines of the world. So when he came to Australia and settled in Canberra, he looked at the climate here, found lots of parallels to some of the great wine regions in Europe, and wondered why there wasn't a wine industry here. So being a man of some entrepreneurial get up and go, to his great credit, he said, well, I'll have a crack myself. So he bought a brand new 44-acre subdivision here in Murrumbateman and proceeded to plant a vineyard. And through many trials and tribulations, frosts and mildew and grasshopper plagues and drought, all the sort of things that, you know, any farmer knows about from the ground up, so to speak, we basically learned over many years how to grow good grapes and then to how to make great wine. And it's kind of gone from strength to strength from there, basically.
So, well, you should be proud of that family history. You have all that Irish eloquence that accompanies it as well as the winemaking. Very valuable thing. I understand you also make a really good Riesling here.
Yeah.
So if I whispered Sauvignon Blanc in your ear, what would your reaction be?
Well, you know, I love great wine, wherever it comes from and whatever grape it's made from. We do make actually some Sauvignon Blanc here. We make a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blend. But if I had to just choose one white variety to plant in the Canberra district, it would definitely be Riesling. Riesling, as you know, is a German variety, so it certainly likes the cooler climate. And it just shines in that situation that we described, like we have here in the Canberra district, where you have the warm days and the cool nights. In that scenario, warm days, cool nights, you tend to retain a lot more of the natural acid in the wine, which gives the wine its freshness and its brightness in the mouth. And also in the case of Riesling, to retain the good natural acid means that they can live for a very long time. So a good Canberra Riesling could live up to 20 years in a good cellar. So you get this great wine with a great acid, crispness and freshness with a beautiful subtle perfume. It just loves it here. It just seems to thrive here and make a delicious wine that can age very well. So what more could you ask for, Mike?
Tim Kirk, you've had a great year and congratulations and more ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
That was